to my channel and welcome to the first video of 2021. I'm so excited for this new year. But yeah, without further ado, let's just get into this video. So today I'm going to talk about the case of Renato Seabra and Caslos Castro. So Renato Seabra was from Cantanhede, Portugal, and people described him as a happy person. He was like happy all the time, smiling all the time. He was very nice and he wanted to live his life to the fullest. And he also aspired to be a model. He really wanted to be a model, and that ambition was what ruined his life. In 2010, when he was 20 years old, Renato decided to participate in a Portuguese TV show called A Procura do Sonho, in English, Looking for a Dream. And it was a show that had to do with, that season had to do with modeling. And as I said before, Renato wanted to be a model, so he decided to go on that show. And he actually ended up reaching the 3rd place in that competition, and he won a model agency contract. On October 9, 2010, Renato received messages and a friend request on Facebook from Caslos Castro. In that message, Carlos was offering him help. He said that he could help him with his modeling career. So now let's talk about Caslos Castro. So Carlos was born on October 5th of 1945 in Angola, but he moved to Portugal in the following year. He was a journalist, a social chronicler, and an author, and he was actually homosexual, and everyone knew about this. He already got out of the closet. Later on, in 1970, he moved to Lisbon and he started working as a trapezist. For those who don't know what that is, it's like drag queen. And he also worked to different magazines as a social chronicle. So Carlos had a lot of contacts due to his job, and we can say that he was the perfect person to help Renato with his modeling career and to help him achieve his goals. But Carlos had always to get something in return. On October 13 of 2010, Carlos and Renato met up at the Hotel Sheraton in Porto. Carlos kissed Renato after a few hours of talking, and he said that he would help him with his modeling career, but he also wanted a relationship with him. But Renato was not gay. But despite that, he accepted. I think it was because he was very ambitious and he didn't care. As long as he could reach his goal, that's all that mattered to him. And when you get in a relationship like that, it can only end up in tragedy. But we'll get into that later. Before they said goodbyes, Renato didn't respond to his offer right away. He said I will think about it. But later on that day, when he arrived at his parents' house, he texted Carlos saying that he had been thinking about what he said and that he wanted to be with him. After this, they met up a lot of times. They traveled to many European countries. Renato came home with a lot of gifts, and all of that to justify the huge quantities of money that were being transferred to his account, because Carlos would give him money every week, I think. And Carlos even promised Renato that one day he will take him to New York. So in New York, a lot of models are there. There are a lot of model agencies. So he's like the dream for any person who wants to be a model, is to go to New York. And they actually went to New York on December 29th of 2010, and they stayed there till the beginning of 2011. They stayed at Intercontinental Hotel in a room 3416, and they visited Times Square, Madison Square Garden, Radio City Hall, and Rockefeller Center, and all of those places that every tourist visits when they go to New York. Carlos even bought Renato a Versace suit and shoes for him to wear in a special occasion. So fast forward a couple of days, they spent the New Year's in Times Square, and on the first day of 2011, they met up with a friend of Carlos called Vanda Pires and with her boyfriend. And Vanda described Renato as a very calm and educated young man. On January 5th, they met again, and Vanda and Carlos started to have a conversation about paying to have sex. And Renato starts to get very uncomfortable with that, because in his mind they're talking about him. He thought that they were talking in code so they could talk about him in front of him. So in that moment, he started to realize that what he was doing with Carlos, their relationship was just disgusting. He was disgusted by it, and he didn't want that anymore, and he basically was regretting every single decision that he had made till that moment. On the next day, Renato goes to gym at 5 a.m., something that was not normal. He normally wouldn't wake up that early to go to the gym, and he called his mother saying that he didn't sleep well last night, but maybe it was something that he ate. It said that he believed that his food was being poisoned, and here we can already see that he wasn't mentally stable, because no one's gonna think that someone is poisoning their food just because they have a conversation about paying for sex. At the end of the day, Carlos and Vanda run into each other at the hotel lobby, and Carlos tells her that Renato went out with some girls and he's going to look for him. And seriously, I don't know why this man was even surprised about Renato going out with other girls if they both knew that he wasn't gay and they both knew why they had a relationship. But anyways, Carlos found Renato and they both came back to the hotel, and Carlos rejects every gesture of affection and acts very cold towards Renato. Then later they went out to dinner with Vanda and her boyfriend, and they were at a restaurant called Paulinho's, and Vanda said that Renato seemed very happy. They had some drinks, and she said that she actually never saw him like that. At some point, Carlos get up from the table to go to the bathroom, and Vanda asks Renato what did he do. And Renato doesn't answer the question, he only laughs. On next day, Carlos is talking with Vanda, and he said to her that him and Renato spent all night arguing, and Renato ended up saying him terrible things, and that he also told him that he wasn't gay, something that they both knew, like deep down they both knew. But after they had the argument, Carlos decided to anticipate their return to Portugal. At this point, Vanda tells him to just buy a ticket to Renato and send him back to Portugal, but Carlos said that when they arrive to Lisbon, each one will go on their own way. On January 7th of 2011 at 12:31 p.m., a maid of the hotel enters the room and sees Carlos leaning against the window. She does her job, and before she left the room, she asked Carlos if everything was okay, and he said yes. A few minutes later, Renato enters the room. Carlos called his mother and then gives the phone to Renato. And Renato just tells his mother that it wasn't a good time for them to talk and that he will call her later. And he just hung up. His mother calls him right back, and she only heard Renato saying to Carlos for him not to answer the phone because it was his mother and she didn't want to talk to him. I mean, if she called, she wanted to talk to him. Carlos says that he's going to call Vanda. Renato tries to stop him and Carlos slaps him. And that's when the attack began. Renato grabs Carlos from the back of his neck and throws him to the floor, and Carlos screams, "You broke my arm." And this was the last words of Carlos. Seconds after, he is laying on the floor unconscious. He's still alive, but he's unconscious. And after that, Renato completely lost his mind. He grabs a computer screen and hits Carlos with it on his head and on his chest, and that's what killed him. Then he grabs a chair and does the same thing, and he grabs a bottle of wine and breaks it on Carlos' head, and then he jumps on Carlos' face. And this attack lasted for about an hour. According to Renato, he imagined Carlos getting up and asking him to have sex with him, and by this time he already felt completely disgusted by it and that relationship that they had. And he said that he wasn't afraid to not being able to stop the almost sexual virus to spread. At this point, he says that he sees the devil in Carlos, and then he decides to change his shoes. I don't know why he did that, but he changed his shoes and then started jumping on Carlos' face again. And now it comes the most morbid part of this crime. Renato grabs a corkscrew and he cuts Carlos' lips and ears, and he also cut his scrotum. Then he grabs Carlos and drags him to the window, and Renato himself removes Carlos' testicles. And Renato said that he was hearing voices to tell him to cut his own wrists because that was the only way that he could be saved, and to put Carlos' testicles on his cuts to absorb the energy. After Renato was done with all of that, he closes the room's windows, he tore the phone cord of the room, took the battery out of Carlos' phone, covered the body with a blanket, took a shower, and he decided to wear the Versace suit and shoes that Carlos had bought him to wear on a special occasion. Guess that was the special occasion. Renato took almost $2,000 of Carlos' wallet, grabbed his passport and his wallet, and just left the room. He left the "Please do not disturb" sign on the room door. At 6:21 p.m., Renato runs into Vanya at the hotel's lobby and he tells her that Carlos won't leave the room. Then he goes to Penn Station where he takes a taxi and asks the driver to drive him to the nearest hospital. Because remember, he had cut his wrist, so he needed to go to the hospital. He also asks the driver where people in New York leave their trash and for him to turn up the volume of the radio so he could hear the news. When he arrives at Roosevelt Hospital, he is taken to observation, and at 10 p.m. the taxi driver hears the description of Renato in the news and he called 911. By this time, people start to arrive at the hotel room number 3416. First the security guard, then the police, then the firefighters, and then the prosecutor, Maxine Rosenthal. Pictures and DNA evidence were taken, witnesses were interviewed, and by this time, police already has their prime suspect and they know exactly where Renato is. And Renato actually ended up confessing the crime. So by this time, everyone knew who had killed Carlos and how he got killed, but why? The question was why? What went through Renato's mind to do something like that? Why did he do that? What motives did he have? So Renato was arrested, and in a few weeks, the doctors of the Roosevelt Hospital and the doctors of the Rikers Island prison gave him medication forcibly. Despite that medication, he has a neurotic behavior. Like, he was handcuffed to his bed and he was naked doing push-ups. Who does that? After various examinations, he was diagnosed by a defense specialist with bipolar disorder aggravated by maniac episode. But the prosecuting psychologist said that Renato had unidentified personality disorder. Everyone agreed that he had some kind of mental illness, that he wasn't mentally stable, but it needed to be proved that he had a psychotic break. Because that was what the defense tried to argue, that he had a psychotic break and that's why he did what he did. But for this to be true, Renato couldn't remember what he had done exactly and couldn't know that what he did was wrong. But he was well aware of his actions. Especially that conversation that he had with the taxi driver asking where the New York people left their trash. Why would he wanted to know that? And he went to the hospital. Of course, he had cuts in his wrists. People said that he went to the hospital because then they could diagnose him with some kind of mental illness because he had cut his wrists and maybe acting like he trying to commit suicide. Even before, right after he left the room, he runs into Vanda and he literally says that Carlos is not leaving the room. Of course he's not, he's dead. So he was well aware of what he had done. So I don't know if that was a psychotic break, but that's what his defense lawyer tried to argue on trial, that Renato had a psychotic break. On October 5th of 2011, the trial began. Ironically, it was Carlos' birthday. Renato was accused of second-degree murder. When Renato was interrogated, he claimed that he was the victim of sexual assault when he was a child and that he also was not gay. He only had interest in women, but he admitted to have sex with two of his cousins, who were boys, by the way. And the defense tried to argue that he was dominated by a maniac episode and a hell mission. When Renato got into the taxi and asked the driver where New York citizens left their trash, the prosecutors said that he was trying to find a way to get rid of the body, while the defense said that he was looking for messages due to that mission. So the defense tried to make Renato look as crazy as possible. 8 weeks later, the trial came to an end. Renato was considered guilty of Carlos' murder and was sentenced to 25 years in prison, and that sentence can extend to life imprisonment. It depends on his behavior in jail. If he has a good behavior, maybe he will be released once he completes the 25 years in prison, or maybe he can spend the rest of his sentence in Portugal. Right now he's in the United States. He's at Clinton Correctional Facility, and I've heard that that prison is one of the worst prisons in the world, where the most dangerous criminals and the worst criminals are. I have to admit, when I've heard about this case like for a while now, but I actually never understood what he did exactly. I just knew that he had killed a man, but I didn't know why. I didn't know how he killed him, and this crime was really morbid. And I think that despite all of that, Renato was actually lucky, because Carlos died before he did morbid things. Because if Carlos was still alive when he was like cutting his lips and his testicles and his ears, his sentence will be a lot worse. I think maybe he will get life imprisonment. When I heard about this case, like people here, I feel like some people actually feel sorry for Renato because he ruined his life, and he ruined his life. We have to say this. I mean, I know the victim here is Carlos, but Carlos was a horrible person. He took advantage of a young man who aspired to be a model and wanted to have a modeling career, just for him to have sex with him and to have, because he wanted a relationship. And I've read that Carlos didn't like the other gay men. He preferred the straight men because the gay men were too feminine and he wanted mainly men. So I think we can see like what type of person he was. He put himself in that situation, and I know he's a victim here, but the truth is that Renato completely ruined his life, and if he's lucky he may be able to get out of the prison, but still he's not gonna have a modeling career. Like, it's over for him. So that's all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tell me in the comments your thoughts on this case as usual, and if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I post true crime videos every Saturday, and it really means the world if you could subscribe. And once again, happy 2021. I hope this year is better than 2020. And if you want me to talk about a specific case, you can reach out to me through the comments or through my social media. My Instagram and my Twitter will be linked down below in the description box. And having all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on next Saturday. Bye bye.